Hey, so for my new book, Ultra Something, I did a 5 city book tour in the US, in Seattle, Portland, Boulder, Washington, D.C., and Chicago. And a lot of people couldn't make those events, so I decided to record this video of the slideshow that I gave at those events. This will be pretty much the exact same thing, except you won't have 40 to 100 people sitting around you laughing at me or with me. Maybe I think they were laughing with me, at my jokes, with me. I'm not sure. Anyway, the presentation is called 30 Questions You May or May Not Have About Ultra Running, and I will just get into it here. Question 1, what is an ultra marathon? Well, here's the Wikipedia definition. It's any race longer than 26.2 miles. Another way to look at it would be in terms of big gulps, like the soft drink you get at 7-Eleven. If a marathon, a 26.2 mile marathon, was a 32-ounce big gulp, an ultra marathon, get this, would be 37.8 ounces. Most of us can wrap our heads around drinking 32 ounces of soda, but who can imagine drinking 37.8 ounces of soda? Or it could be 122 ounces. It's pretty broad, I guess, is what I'm saying. The term ultra marathon is pretty broad. Question 2, who are you? Well, my name's Brendan. I am a writer, illustrator, and filmmaker, also a dad, and sometimes an ultra runner. About 12 years ago now, I created a website called semirad.com, which eventually became what is, I think, known as a personal brand. I wasn't trying to do that at the time. I just was picking a website name that I thought was okay. That turned into what passes for a full-time job now. So here we are. In terms of big gulp soft drinks, if Rad were 122 ounces, I think I'd be somewhere around 37.8 ounces maybe. Question 3, are you an expert on ultra running? No, I am not. Question 4, are ultra marathons different from marathons? So in putting together this slideshow, I drew this pretty elaborate chart of marathons versus ultra marathons, and I thought it was pretty funny. And I had that slide in right after this question, and I showed it to my wife, Hillary, and I said, okay, it's going to be that, or it's going to be this thing I found on Reddit, which was this. And she said, the Reddit thing's way funnier. So I just scrapped my chart, and this is what we have, which I think is fairly accurate as far as memes go. It's also the first time I've ever identified with John Daly, the golfer. Question number 5, do you have to run the whole time? Well, I think about it this way. Here's a photo of Courtney Dauwalter, one of the greatest ultra runners of all time. In this photo, she is winning the 2023 UTMB, which is basically the Super Bowl of ultra running if you don't know anything about it. Here's another photo of Kilian Jornet, also one of the greatest ultra runners of all time. This is a photo of him winning the 2022 UTMB. Again, the Super Bowl of ultra running, runs around Mont Blanc. And you notice in these photos, neither of them are running, they're walking. And I figure, you know what, good enough for Kilian and Courtney, good enough for me. Question 6, doesn't it get boring? A short section I'll read here. This is page 241 of the book. German-American psychologist Hugo Munsterberg's writings in the early 1900s made him more or less the father of something that would later be called industrial psychology, or the study of human behavior as it pertains to work. Munsterberg was interested in using psychology to help figure out how to match people's personalities and abilities to appropriate jobs, and he believed that would help pretty much everything: performance, productivity, career longevity, and motivation. As part of his research, Munsterberg visited large factories, and one of the things he liked to do during his factory visits was to find the person that he thought had the most boring job and ask them how they felt about the job. He assumed that people who performed repetitive tasks every day for years and years would find them tedious and unenjoyable. In 2 examples in his 1913 book, Psychology and Industrial Efficiency, he was pleasantly surprised that repetitive labor was not, as he'd thought, quote, a source of discomfort, unquote, for workers. A woman who was responsible for packing 13,000 incandescent bulbs in tissue paper every day, adding up to approximately 50 million bulbs in her 12-year career, packing a box of 25 lamps every 42 or 43 seconds, told Munsterberg that she found the work, quote, really interesting, unquote, and that she felt there was continuous variation in that she always managed to find something to observe and something to think about. At another factory, Munsterberg interviewed a man whose job was to feed a machine that punched a precisely placed hole in metal strips, which required the man to perform about 34,000 uniform movements every day on the job for 14 years. The man told Munsterberg that he found the work interesting and stimulating, and that he actually found himself liking the work more than he had at the beginning of his career. The man seemed to enjoy that his job required total concentration, and, Munsterberg wrote, quote, he added especially that it is not only the wage that satisfies him, but that he takes decided pleasure in the activity itself. Munsterberg wrote that he did happen upon many people who had, it seemed to him, more interesting and varied factory jobs, but who complained bitterly over the monotonous, tiresome factory labor. He concluded, I became more and more convinced that the feeling of monotony depends much less upon the particular kind of work than upon the special disposition of the individual. It cannot be denied that the same contrast exists in the higher classes of work. Question 7, do you have to wear a vest? You don't have to wear a vest. You definitely don't have to wear the vest this guy's wearing in this photo. But, you go out for a 45-minute, 60-minute run, you don't have to take that much with you. You could, if it starts raining, just turn around and run home a lot of the time. Even though you get wet, you're not worried about surviving. Running much longer than that, 2 hours, 3 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours, you kind of want to have some stuff with you. So a vest is nice to organize your stuff. This is an illustration from page 117 of the book. This is not everyone's vest. This is an illustration of my vest. Question 8, why would anyone run that far? Well, when you ask people who do these sorts of things, you can ask 10 people, you'll get 10 different answers. You ask 100 people, you'll get 100 different answers. I prefer to look to what I think is one of the greatest ultra running documentaries of all time, Forrest Gump, when he is running across America multiple times, and the media gets a hold of the story, and reporters start tracking him down and asking him, why are you running? And he says, I just felt like running. And later he's recounting the story of how he ran across America multiple times to a woman on the park bench. And she says, and so you just ran? And he says, yeah. Question 9, does it hurt your knees? Probably could hurt your knees. I don't know. Probably could hurt a lot of places. I made this helpful chart of body parts that may hurt while running an ultra marathon. If you're skeptical and you think, oh, well, there's probably no way this part here would hurt when you're running, I bet you can find someone who's run an ultra marathon who would say, yes, that did hurt. Sometimes when people say, where does it hurt? You just it's just everywhere. It's just the whole thing. The whole thing hurts. That's what's going on right now. Question 10, can running ultra marathons cause permanent damage? Lots of things can cause permanent damage, I guess. Maybe a better way to look at it, I'll read this passage from page 141 of the book. In 2003, neuroscientist Sonia Cavagelli and psychologist Martha McClintock conducted a study to investigate their hypothesis that people who have a fear of novelty or a fearful behavioral style emerging early in life would have increased adrenal activation, and because of that, die earlier. Essentially, responding to new things with fear and stress shortens your life. They studied Norway rats, who have about a 2-year lifespan in the wild. They established that they could classify rats as neophobic, or hesitant to explore a novel environment, or neophilic, which means willing to explore a novel environment, based on behavioral differences, and that the behavioral differences started early in the rat's infancy. They were either shy or bold from a very young age. To do this study, they placed each rat in a large arena, large to a rat, about 4 feet by 4 feet, and watched how the rat reacted to being in a new environment with a new object in the arena each time. Shy rats would move along the walls, and bold rats would check out the novel object. The rats were tested every 6 months, and the shy rats stayed shy, and the bold rats stayed bold. The bold rats' stress hormones would go back to normal more quickly than those in the shy rats, and in the end, the bold rats lived 20% longer than the shy rats. Dr. Kelly Lambert covered this study in her classes and in her book, The Lab Rat Chronicles, where she wrote, quote, "Of course, this bold response may not be as healthy in the real world. I often tell my students that the bold rat probably would have died in a motorcycle accident in the outside world. All things being equal, however, you're better off boldly going where no rat has gone before." Question 11, what do you eat? This could be a lifelong question for a lot of people. This slide, I've grabbed this photo off the internet, a lot of options. There are endless options for people. And you can, everything's different for everyone. People have all kinds of things that they like to eat that work for them, that don't work for other people. You can go down rabbit holes and try to figure this out. I have a very simple test. It's just one question. And the question is, does it make you poop somewhere you would rather not poop? If the answer to that question is no, then it is okay to eat that food. If the answer to that question is yes, maybe you don't eat that food when you're running. Question 12, even bacon? Sure, people eat bacon, ultramarathons. I don't eat bacon, but people eat bacon. That's probably one of the reasons people like them more than marathons. Question 13, what do you do if you have to poop out there? Well, I adapted this system from a friend of mine who used this to change tampons when she was out rock climbing in the wilderness or in the backcountry. You get yourself a latex glove and a single serving wet wipe. You go off into the woods, you do your thing, you find a place to bury it so no one steps in it and it decomposes properly. You do your thing, you clean up, and then you're holding this wet wipe in your hand and you peel the glove off of your hand, keeping the gnarly wet wipe inside of it. Then you tie a knot in the wrist of the glove and you put that in your vest or your pocket and you move on. And you can eat potato chips with that same hand you just did that with. It's totally sterile. It's amazing. It's a fantastic technique. The budget version of this is just to use a shopping bag, like a plastic shopping bag, but I would say that those can have holes in them that you don't spot until you're using them, and then you realize it, so it's not quite as sterile. Question 14, have you ever received a participation trophy? I have. I'm quite happy with my participation trophy collection, actually. Here's a bunch of medals and stuff I've gotten for running ultramarathon races, and you'll notice none of them say champion, none of them say sportsmanship award, none of them say most improved. They all just say basically you participated in a thing. And I think these are pretty hard-won participation trophies, so I don't know. Question 15, are ultramarathons fun? Well, let me read this quick section here. Page 203 of the book. Humans, or at least some humans, love to eat spicy foods. Other animals, it seems, do not. Psychologist Paul Rosen formally studied chimpanzees in captivity and informally studied dogs in Mexico and found that animals rarely develop a preference for spicy foods. Humans, Rosen set out to prove in a 2013 paper, get pleasure from, quote, benign masochism, unquote, or hedonic reversals, getting good feelings from things that should make us feel bad, or enjoying initially negative experiences that the body and brain falsely interprets as threatening. Rosen's team of researchers surveyed 390 people, asking them to assign a numerical rating of 0 to 100 in order to rate how much they liked each item on a list of 30 uncomfortable experiences in 8 categories: sad, burn, disgust, fear, pain, alcohol, exhaust, and bitter. The list included experiences like watching scary movies, listening to sad music, getting massages, hearing disgusting jokes, eating spicy food, drinking unsweetened coffee, being physically active, and being physically exhausted. Participants gave the highest ratings to feeling physically active, thrill rides, feeling exhausted after physical activity, eating spicy food, and listening to sad music. The lowest scores were flashes of cold pain and eating stinky cheese, which came in dead last. Question 16, what kind of stretches do you do? Yeah, I mean, stretching is probably a good idea. Question 17. Do ultra runners experience chafing? Again, I've put together this handy diagram of body parts that may chafe while running an ultramarathon. And again, if you look at this chart and you say, well, there's that body part there, probably no one's ever had that chafe while running an ultramarathon. I'm sure we can find somebody to disprove you. Question 18. What is a pacer? Okay, so here's a photo of Eliud Kipchoge, his attempt to run a sub 2-hour marathon. These 7 men around him are some of the world's fastest distance runners. They were switched out at regular intervals with a whole team of people who were, they basically got in formation to block the wind, but also keep Kipchoge on pace so he could run 1:59, whatever, 1:59:59, if worst case scenario. They're some of the fastest people in the world. Their job is to run really fast and stay on the exact pace. That's one kind of pacer. A pacer in an ultra marathon is quite a bit different. This is from page 76 of the book. This is just a little chart I put together. Some of your skills, instead of running, a 1:59:59 marathon pace, are forcing your friend to eat food, jogging 15-minute miles, positively reframing scenarios. That's kind of the big one. Walking 20-minute miles, gently discouraging the fetal position, deciphering grunts, groans, and sobs and other nonverbal communication, and saying every once in a while, hey, it's okay, you can cry, it's fine. Question 19, how much training should you do? I am not an authority on that, but I did borrow this chart from another great ultra running book called Relentless Forward Progress by Brian Powell, which I have had on my shelf since 2015. This is Brian's chart of a training plan for a 100-mile ultra marathon race. And you can see in that column where it says total, the total creeps up, into the 50s, the 60s, and then 70 miles a week, which 70 miles of running in a week, no matter who you are, is a big chunk of time, even if you're running really fast. So it's a lot. It's a lot of time. Question 20, why would you spend so much time on something that doesn't make money, benefit society, save the world, or anything like that? Allow me to answer that indirectly with this passage from the book. The first time Ray Yoder ate at a Cracker Barrel, he wasn't that impressed. He was in Nashville in 1978, helping to set up an RV show at the Opryland Resort and Convention Center, and there was a Cracker Barrel nearby. So he ate there, and it didn't exactly blow his mind. But he had a job delivering RVs across the country from a manufacturer in his hometown of Goshen, Indiana, and he spent a lot of time on the road. So he found himself in a lot of places with Cracker Barrel restaurants. He kept eating at Cracker Barrels, and they started to grow on him. He was almost always on the road by himself while his wife, Wilma, was at home raising their 4 children. When all the kids had finished school and moved out of their house, Wilma started to join Ray on the road. Around 1993, they realized they had eaten at lots of Cracker Barrel restaurants and decided to try visiting all of them. By August of 2017, the Yoders had both turned 81 and had visited almost all of the 600-plus Cracker Barrel restaurants in the United States. Ray mostly eating blueberry pancakes if it was breakfast time, meatloaf if he was there for lunch or dinner, and pot roast if it was Sunday. Cracker Barrel caught wind of Ray and Wilma's quest and flew them out to Portland to visit the newly opened restaurant in Tualatin, Oregon, number 645. A line of applauding Cracker Barrel employees greeted them at the door with a bouquet of sunflowers and roses for Wilma and custom aprons for both of them. Their journey had taken them to 44 states, and Ray estimated they had driven more than 5 million miles. He told a newspaper reporter, quote, "Well, everybody does something, usually anyway. So we thought we would do this, and it would be fun." Question 21. What is an IT band? Why does it cause pain in some runners? And what is the cure for IT band syndrome? Nobody knows. Nobody knows what the IT band is. Nobody knows why it hurts. Nobody knows how to cure it. No one knows what the fix is. It's a medical mystery. You can Google it on the internet. No one knows anything about it. Question 22. Is a 100-mile race twice as hard as a 50-mile race? Seems like pretty simple math. Here's an answer I found on Reddit, though. Yeah, 100-mile race, just 3 50-mile races back to back. Question 23, what is the longest ultra marathon? Well, the longest ultra marathon in the world is, here's a map of it. It is called the Sri Chinmoy Self-Transcendence 3,100-mile race. It is in a neighborhood in Queens, New York, around a single city block. It's just over a half mile. Runners run this lap, I think like 5,600 times over the span of about 55 days, something like that. It takes a long time. It's not like this race course is closed either. They're just like running by normal people on their way to school and work, and they just keep running around in this formation. It's crazy. My friend Sanjay made this wonderful film about it. I'm sure if you're interested in getting behind the scenes of this race, it's a wonderful watch. You might be thinking, wow, that's like, why would anybody dedicate 50 some days of their life to running around a single city block in Queens? And that seems like kind of out there and kind of ridiculous. Well, here's a map of all the Cracker Barrel restaurants in the United States, and that takes almost 40 years for normal people to visit. So I don't know. Question 24, is the next aid station or the top of this climb or the finish line coming up soon? I've actually been asked versions of this question in a lot of races, sometimes in the dark, after midnight, and it's someone I'm passing or they're, next to me for a while, and they ask something like this, and I'm trying not to think about that, but what I tell them is, you're almost there. Of course, we're almost there. We've got to be almost there. One time in a race, a lady yelled as I was getting to the top of, I think was the last climb of the race. She yelled, "You're almost there." And I said, existentially, I'm already there. And I just kept going. Question 25. During a race, do you ever think about quitting? Here's a section of the book, page 248. And this is during a race in North Carolina called the Hellbender 100. By mile 74, the pain from my blisters had not subsided or even stabilized. It was now shooting up into my legs every time I took a step. I tried gritting my teeth. I tried breathing more deeply. I tried, as a competitive kayaker had told me a few years ago, to imagine chewing on the pain and swallowing it. None of these things worked. What would work, I knew, was stopping, sitting down, quitting the race, going back to our Airbnb, popping the blisters, taking a shower, eating a pizza, and sleeping for 12 hours. And then getting on a plane, flying home, arriving, taking all my running gear, setting it on fire in a steel barrel somewhere, never running again, taking up chess or macrame or something that didn't promise long hours of diverse types of pain as a meaningful experience, living the rest of my life with relative peace in all 10 of my toenails, and retiring somewhere serene and quiet for my final years. Instead, we kept hiking uphill and then running downhill, jogging 14-minute miles and then 17-minute miles. And the only positive thing I could think through the lightning bolts shooting through my feet and legs every step was, it's mile 75 and I'm still able to run. It's mile 79 and I'm still running. It's mile 80 and, oh wow, they have pancakes at this aid station. It's mile 81 and I'm still running. Question 26. What do you do if you're at an aid station and you're tired and it's cold and it's the middle of the night and you have lots of miles left in a race and they have a campfire going and some chairs around it? No, you don't go sit. The campfire's not for you. Don't go there. That's not your campfire. That's for other people. Question 27. Do lessons from ultra running apply to life? Here's a quote. A lady named Vivian, who is an experienced ultramarathon runner, told me as I was getting ready to run my first 100-mile race. I have since paraphrased this to, when you feel bad, eat something. When you feel good, slow down. But what she said was, when you feel low, eat and eat more. When you feel good, slow down. I think this is applicable to anyone. There's a short video of my kid, Jay, running. And, oh man, buddy, you just gotta slow down. If you feel bad, you should eat something. Works for toddlers, works for ultramarathon runners, works for adults too. Question 28. I'm not sure. Do you think I could run an ultramarathon? That's a good question. Allow me to read from page 51 of the book. When Takeru Kobayashi began his career in competitive eating, the world record for hot dogs eaten by one human being in 12 minutes was 25 1/8. That's hot dogs with buns. When Kobayashi entered the Nathan's Hot Dog Eating Contest in 2001, it had been going for almost 40 years and was still an eating contest. But Kobayashi, who was 5 feet 8 inches and 130 pounds, viewed competitive eating as a sport. So he trained for it like it was a sport, practicing, experimenting with training methods, tracking what worked and what didn't, and developing new techniques, like ripping the hot dogs and buns in half and soaking the buns in water before shoving them into his mouth. When he showed up to the contest in 2001, he ate 50 hot dogs in 12 minutes, blowing every contestant out of the water and setting a new world record by almost double. What made Kobayashi different? Up until that point, everyone just believed that humans were only capable of eating somewhere around 20 hot dogs in 12 minutes. Kobayashi did not. In a 2014 interview with Stephen Dubner on the Freakonomics podcast, Kobayashi said, quote, "I think the thing about human beings is that they make a limit in their mind of what their potential is. They decide, I've been told this, or this is what society tells me, or they've been made to believe something." Kobayashi's new record was basically the 4-minute mile of competitive eating. People thought it was impossible for years, and then someone finally did it, and then more people did it. Kobayashi won 6 straight Nathan's Hot Dog Eating Contests until Joey Chestnut won in 2007, eating 67 hot dogs to Kobayashi's 63. From Kobayashi's win in 2001 onward, the lowest winning total has been 44.5, a number thought impossible prior to 2000. So yeah, I think you could probably run an ultramarathon. Question 29, but I don't even like running. Me neither. I asked people in the audience at these book tour shows if they have a life partner, if they have a child, if they have a dog that they love, and if they do they like that person 100% of the time? No one likes someone 100% of the time, but you still love them. So that's what this chart is about. Question 30, what is ultra something about? It's about all these things that we just discussed. It's also about $17. Thanks for listening.